Hey everyone, this is Elenbaas from Nightlight Astrology, and today we are going to take a look at the meaning of Venus in the sign of Taurus. In order to do this, I am going to rewind an old episode that I made for my Planets in Profile series on Venus and Taurus, which I hope you guys will enjoy. I'm also wanting to expose people to this series because this spring I will be getting into the next part of this series with a look at the moon through the 12 signs. We'll be doing Planets in Profile, the moon through the 12 signs. We've heard it on Venus, Mercury, and Mars. So Venus is in Taurus right now and is going to be conjoining Uranus in Taurus, and we'll be looking at that tomorrow. But for today, I just wanted to do a little deep dive on the meaning of Venus in the sign in one of her own home signs of Taurus. So that is what we are doing today. Before we get into it, as always, don't forget to like and subscribe, share your comments. Tell us a little bit about Venus and Taurus in your own birth chart. If you were born with that, I'd love to hear that. Or if you have a grabbed story that you want to share, use the hashtag grabbed or email us the story grabbed@nightlightastrology.com about Venus and Taurus in your own chart, or Venus's entrance into a new sign or house in your chart. I'd love to hear those stories. You can find a transcript of any of my daily talks on the website, which is nightlightastrology.com. So on that note, I hope you will enjoy a visit with former me from 4 or 5 years ago. It's funny to look back on these episodes when I rewatch them. I still love the content, but it's weird to see, like, I was in just such a totally different phase of my life, and it's kind of fun. So anyway, hope you guys are having a great day and that you'll enjoy this episode. Take it easy, everyone.
Hi, everybody. This is Elenbaas from Nightlight Astrology, and I'm sitting down to do another episode of Planets in Profile. Now, in the next 2 episodes I'm making, I'm catching up actually with Venus because I've gotten behind on Venus's movements. She went through Taurus, and now she's in Gemini. This is spring 2019. And so I'm catching up on those 2, but you can listen to this anytime because the Planets in Profile series is really meant to help you as a student of astrology interpret the meaning of Venus and Mars. I also do some coverage of Mars as we're going through the signs as well. And it's meant to help give you some ability to interpret the planets in your birth chart a little bit better. So, okay, so I'm going to go ahead and put, there we go. So Venus and Taurus, we just had this pass through as my first house, so that's why I was MIA for a little bit. I had a nice Venus and Taurus, a lot of very nice, like, not vacations, but like I had to travel for work a couple times, and it was really pretty relaxing for the most part. And yeah, I always love it when Venus is in my first house. It's a Taurus rising. Okay, so we're going to talk about, I have, for this one, I chose the Endless Harmony photo from the Beach Boys because Brian Wilson, Venus and Taurus. So Venus in the sign of Taurus is in her home sign. This is Venus's happy sign, also a masculine sign. So he is always happy. He is also happy in Libra, you could say. But regardless, Venus in Taurus is very happy because this is Venus's home sign. It's the feminine sign of Venus. It's a cool, dry, feminine, solid earth sign. So it's cool and dry, that's the quality. Feminine or yin. Solid meaning it's less movable. It's more sort of durable and a stable sign. And that has a lot to do with that. Really, you could interpret that sort of psychologically in a birth chart, but it also has a lot to do with the quality, you might say, of the karma associated with whatever planets and topics are involved with the house of Taurus in the chart using whole sign houses. Anyway, what we say about a planet when it's in its home sign is this. Traditionally speaking, we say the planet is able to accommodate or take care of its own needs or desires, its own significations. It's able to affect them more easily. So for example, we've taken Venus through a lot of other signs in this series, and whenever Venus is in another sign, we've said that she's like a house guest. Venus will have to Venus says, I'd like this or I'd like that. Whatever is natural to Venus: beauty, love, art, women, friendships, harmony, sensuality, sexuality. These are the things that Venus wants, and then it's up to Venus's host to fulfill those needs. So when Venus is in Gemini, it's going to be mercurial things, right? So Mercury Hermes will provide the content on some level for Venus. But when Venus is in either Libra or Taurus, it's as though Venus is able to do more purely Venusian things without the added filter of another planet being involved. What that means is generally speaking, that you will see the individual embodying Venusian qualities in a way that is stronger and more distinct. So it's kind of boring in a way. It's just like saying, well, it's just Venus. In every other case, you're sort of combining Venus with another planet. But in this case, you're just sort of saying Venus. So, it's sort of quintessentially Venusian. And then the major qualifying thing becomes the difference between, say, Libra and Taurus. What is the major way that Venus acts or behaves when Venus is in Taurus compared to Libra, which is Venus's feminine sign? So Taurus is the feminine. This is a typo in my my little PDF here. It says Taurus is the feminine sign of Taurus. That's interesting. So Taurus is the feminine sign of Venus, and yet is located on the yang half of the solar year, which is to say that between the spring equinox and the fall equinox, between 0 Aries and 0 Libra, there's more sunlight in a 24-hour day in the northern hemisphere than darkness. And so this is the yang half of the zodiac. Now remember, this is all archetypal and symbolic. This is not, you can use this language regardless of where you live. It doesn't have to be, the middle of spring for a planet to be in Taurus, right? And yet it will still embody in some ways some of the qualities that are archetypally associated with spring. So at any rate, similarly, for example, you don't have to be born during the middle of spring to be a Taurus and still have the symbolism of Taurus really apply to you if you're born in the southern hemisphere during Taurus season. At any rate, okay, so there's always a big debate that follows that. So what is it that is unique about Taurus, though? And you can go back and listen to me talk about the meaning of the sun in Taurus and get a deeper take on that, or Mars in Taurus, that talk. But Taurus is a sign that, although is more passive, more receptive, more in some ways inert, because it's an earth sign, and it's more of a yin sign. This is still taking place in the middle of spring as the light is gaining and growing. So sometimes you'll hear people say that Taurians are possessive. This is actually a big part of what defines the Taurian mystique, is that Taurians are actually by natural have incredibly powerful urges and appetites and desires and even lust, and almost sometimes even a bloodlust. It's so intense. And yet it's more receptive. It sort of it's going to be less like aggressive in how it goes about getting it. It's more about the sort of, being productive and trying to gather resources or desired things, and then to hold them, to keep them, to allow them to come in and build the power, the mojo, and the feeling of greatness or bigness. So there's a tremendous, almost like, again, like almost a lusty quality to Taurus that slips beneath the radar a lot of the times, because you don't see how hard sometimes Taurians are working to maintain what they have, or to hold or possess what they have, and they make it look easy and simple. But on the other hand, of course, Taurus is related in some ways to the naturalness and ease of the animal body, as Stephen Forrest likes to say. He's another astrologer that I like. So, Taurus can be about simplicity, beauty, and the natural world, or it can be about this kind of possessiveness and intense desiring lusty quality. And we see this in a variety of ways. For example, celebrities with Venus and Taurus are well-known historical personalities. Adolf Hitler, right? Someone who was a collector and hoarder in some ways of artwork, but also, vandalizer, destroyer, and thief and sort of possessor during World War II. So the lust quality is there, and there's a lot more that could be said about him, but I don't want to spend too much time on Hitler. So how about Diana, Princess of Wales, sort of this classic princess Taurian kind of beauty. I won't say too much about any of these today, but because I'm trying to catch up with this series. But Prince, someone who was incredibly fashionable and had this incredible artistic aesthetic taste, but also self-described sometimes as like intensely possessive and lustful. And of course, a huge portion of his career was defined by a battle for the rights to possess ownership of his own music. Marlon Brando, apparently was incredibly he has this way of looking really simple, and looking like, I'm laid back, I'm solid, I'm beautiful, I'm easygoing, so that just that kind of ease that he exuded was apparently also intensely controlling. So, just some of the juxtapositions. Paul McCartney, same thing. Makes his musicianship look amazingly easy, and the same thing, had a huge level of artistic sensibility that was also at times very rigid and controlling, and also sometimes had appetite for beautiful things that was kind of out of control. Now this is, again, you'll hear different people say different things about some of these personalities, so I'm just reporting on what I've read and gathered while studying these particular people for this slideshow. So Bono, there's another one, just in some ways an artistic genius and workaholic, just always driven to create art, and makes, has that appearance of cool. I'm cool. It's easy, right? But there's a lot more than meets the eye underneath the surface. Melania Trump, there's another, and then going into other personalities that are darker again, like Jeffrey Dahmer. I know that's a really dark one, but there's the same thing. Was a hoarder, was sort of had this kind of hoarding mentality, and also had this intense lust that was a part of his kind of psychopathic qualities. Ella Fitzgerald, Boy George, a couple more artists, musicians, and both, of course, had extraordinary artistic talent and interesting style. Especially, Boy George really noted for his style. John Wayne, there again is that classic easy. I got this. Incredibly controlling, and sometimes again very intensely desirous and sometimes even impatient quality. And it's always, I think it's always important to understand whether the sign is coming on the yin or yang half of the year, because Taurus, even though it's a feminine sign, picks up on the aspirational journey of the sun heading upward, and the season of spring, which is, by nature, it's about procreation and desire. Also, Brian Wilson, the Beach Boys, Endless Harmony, right? Brian Wilson is someone who had incredible hard time controlling his appetites, desires, was incredibly obsessive as a musician, so much so that he sort of lost his mind, and yet was also this like artistic, musical harmony genius. There's not anything that's necessarily bad about Venus and Taurus. So I don't mean to make it sound as though every Venus and Taurus has this underlying, intense problem. But I'm trying to highlight the way that Venus in Taurus does have this duality that's not always apparent. Because otherwise, well, in some ways, all you end up really saying is like, nice, stable, beautiful, classic beauty, artistic, like sensual, earthy. And there's more, a little bit more to it than that. So, but a general thing to interpret if you have Venus in your birth chart in Taurus is just that there will be a natural ease with Venusian things, and there will also be a kind of fixed quality, a stable quality, security, but also sometimes the possessiveness and the sort of like greedy possessiveness that comes along with it, ambition, and sort of desiring to hold. I mean, one way of thinking about it is that the bull, right? The bull as well as the calf. This is an image in some ways, that we talk about as a holy animal. In India, it's holy, it's worshipped, but also, it's slaughtered and sacrificed to appease the gods, to get power, or to get something. And so there's this thing about cows and bulls and desire and sacrifice and death, and also trying to obtain things. And that goes back a long way. cows and bulls, you know, to a certain, they're providers, but and they represent something very natural and sort of docile and beautiful, and it feels like it's very easy and slow and, you know, kind of sensual. But then there's this, you know, it's really complicated relationship that we have to that as human beings, because we can't help but be driven also by our appetites and by making the mistake of thinking that satisfying our senses 24/7 brings happiness. So at any rate, that's a bit about Venus and Taurus. I hope you've enjoyed. I will be back shortly with Venus and Gemini, and we'll be caught up, I think. Okay, take care. Bye.